Assalamu alaikum. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so we'll start with today's lecture. So today we'll just finish a bit early because I have another meeting at around 3:15, 3:20. So we'll just finish it in an hour. So we'll just keep the lecture a bit small, and then we'll continue our discussion tomorrow also. So we will be discussing about pressure gradient today. So I'll just show you the equations first and we'll discuss about it. So this is, if we have been considering two cases so far. So we have analyzed a flow around a flat plate like this in two configurations. So we have a flat plate like this, and then we have the incoming flow coming in this direction, right? And then because of the viscosity of the fluid, we have a boundary layer developing like this. So we discussed in detail about the boundary condition, and we also discussed about the governing equation for a boundary condition, which we said that it is X momentum equation. So if you recall from last lecture, we have three governing equations for fluid, two governing equations for fluid. One is the continuity equation, which is the conservation of mass. So the conservation of mass equation is shown over here. Curly U by curly X equals to curly V over curly Y equals to 0 for a flat plate. So now you can see that in this case, since this flat plate is lying in x-axis and y-axis only, so this is a planar. So you can say that it is a two-dimensional body. So for a two-dimensional body, we only have u component and v component of velocity. So the continuity equation is given by this equation, right? In addition to this, we also have momentum equation. So momentum equation, if you recall, this is the momentum equation that we have for a flat plate, right? Now you can see that this momentum equation also has an unsteady term, which is delta u du by dt, change in u velocity with respect to time. So this is the x momentum equation. So when we apply the conservation of momentum principle in x direction, we get this equation. So now in this case, we assume that the flow is steady. When we assume this flow to be steady, this unsteady term will become 0. So this change in velocity with respect to time is unsteady term. So when we say that the flow is steady, it means this term is 0. In addition to this, when we discussed about the boundary condition for flat plate, we also made another assumption. We said that the pressure is constant throughout. When the pressure is constant, this term, the derivative of pressure with respect to x direction, will also be 0, right? And then once we put this term equal to 0, the x momentum, this is the x momentum boundary layer equation, the x momentum reduces to this form. So you can clearly see here that when we say that the pressure acting on this plate is constant, that means the derivative of pressure with respect to displacement or x direction will be 0, right? So now if the pressure is constant, now this equation, if we solve this equation inside the boundary layer, we will get a parabolic profile like this. So this parabolic profile of boundary layer is the result of this x momentum equation that we have reduced. So far we have not considered the effect of pressure gradient. We have assumed the pressure to be zero, and that is why we have the equation like this. So this equation is also called Prandtl-Clausius equation, as we discussed in the last few slides also, and it will give us a parabolic profile like this. Now we considered two cases. This was one of the cases that we considered for a flat plate. Now this type of orientation of the plate where it is kept parallel to the incoming flow is called streamlined configuration or streamlined body. Now if I place the same plate perpendicular to the incoming flow, in this case this is called a blunt body. When if I increase the area, perpendicular area to which the incoming flow is in contact, so this is called a blunt body. Some other example of blunt body is flow past a circular cylinder like this. This is also an example of blunt body. So we discussed about these three different cases: flow, flat plate lying parallel to the incoming flow, flat plate perpendicular to the incoming flow, and the third case that we discussed was circular cylinder. So far, we have considered a case where the pressure was constant. If the pressure is constant, then this x momentum equation is reduced to this form, and if we plot this equation inside the boundary layer, we get a parabolic profile like this. Now we will try to include the effects of pressure gradient and see how it affects the boundary conditions, also boundary layer flow. So now for that, this is again example of an aircraft in which the incoming flow is shown by this arrow, and then this aircraft also has boundary layer on its surface, and because of that boundary layer there will be forces generated on this arrow, this aircraft, and those forces can be resolved into two components: resultant force Fr because of the pressure force and the shear force. So we already saw that when we have boundary layer flow, there are two types of forces acting on the structure. So the first one is pressure force. So the pressure force is acting like this, perpendicular to the structure. So this is pressure force, and the other type of force is shear force, which is because of the boundary layer or the viscosity, which is acting in this direction like this. And this force is called tau. Now the resultant, when we integrate these forces along the entire surface of this aerofoil, we get the resultant force like this, Fr. And then Fr will have two components, Fl, Fd in the direction of incoming flow, and Fl in the direction perpendicular to incoming flow. So we discussed about this, right? Now this pressure, if this pressure is not constant, now if this pressure is changing, if it has a pressure gradient in x direction, then what happens? So now the equation for in order to include the effect of pressure gradient inside this equation, so we consider this equation, and from because this equation is unsteady equation, so we can apply Bernoulli's equation in this case. When we apply Bernoulli's equation, this is what we get. So sorry, I'll discuss about this figure later on. Now we know from Bernoulli's equation that now if this is just showing you a surface. This can be a wing surface, this can be a circular cylinder surface, and then we have 2 points. At point 1 we have pressure P1, and at point 2 we have pressure P2. If P1 is not equal to P2, then the corresponding velocities of one UFS1 and UFS2 at 2 will also not be not equal to each other. This is when we have uh, pressure gradient. Because of the pressure gradient, the pressure at 1 and 2 are different, and as a result the velocities will also be different. So we'll be discussing about this thing in detail in today's lecture. So now we know from Bernoulli's equation that P over rho, this is the pressure term, plus pressure force plus kinetic energy, half U square, is equal to constant, right? So this is from Bernoulli's equation. Now if I integrate or differentiate this equation with respect to x-axis, I will get 1 over rho will come out. Differentiation of P will be dP with respect to dx, right? And then plus, if I differentiate half U square with respect to x, it will be 2U, 2 minus 1 U over 2, and du by dx equals to 0. So this 2 will cancel out with this 2, and I will have this equation 1 over rho dP over dx. And if I take this term on the other hand side, it will become minus u du by dx. So this equation proves that if we increase the pressure, the velocity will decrease, right? Why? Because of the presence of this negative sign, right? So if we increase the pressure, the velocity will decrease, and vice versa. Now if I put this equation over here in this x momentum equation, so then that means I can write x momentum equation like this. Now we have the equation, this is the continuity equation which will remain the same. Now for the x momentum equation, I can write, instead of the pressure term, I can replace minus 1 over rho dP by dx by this term, which is u du by dx, right? So now this is actually a pressure term. So now that means that if we have pressure gradient, it will affect the boundary layer. How it will affect the boundary layer, we'll be discussing about it now. Now when the flow is in the inviscid or irrotational outer flow region outside of the boundary layer, right? So I'll just read this and then I'll show you a very interesting video in which it will be clear to you. When the flow in the inviscid or irrotational outer flow regime outside the boundary layer accelerates, ux increases and px decreases. We refer this to as favorable pressure gradient. Now if you look at this flat plate, we have this incoming flow coming in this direction. We have boundary layer very close to the surface. The thickness of the boundary layer is sigma. It is such that u equals to 0.99 of incoming flow, and then this is outside boundary layer. So now outside boundary layer, we call the flow as inviscid or irrotational outer flow, which is this flow, right? And now in this case you can see that in this case, if u accelerates, if the value of u, as you move away from the boundary layer, the value of u increases, right? If u increases outside the boundary layer, pressure will decrease based on the equation that we discussed earlier, because 1 over rho dp over dx equals to minus u du by dx. So if velocity increases, pressure will decrease. This is called favorable pressure gradient, because we have high inertial flow. If we have high velocity, we say that the inertial force is dominant. as compared to viscous force. The viscous force will be dominant on the surface of the flat plate or any structure for that matter, right? So now we, in this case, we refer it to as when us uh, the flow in the area of flow acceleration, ux increases and px decreases. This is referred to as favorable pressure gradient. Now, it is favorable or desirable because the boundary layer in such an accelerating flow is usually thin, hugs closely to the wall, and therefore is not likely to separate from the wall. Now, because of this high inertia, there is very much likelihood that the flow will not stick to the structure. In case if it sticks, it the boundary layer will be very thin because of the high inertial flow. That is why it is called favorable pressure gradient. In this case, we don't have any boundary layer. If we have boundary layer, that is very thin and we can ignore it. So now, on the contrary, we have another region when the outer flow deaccelerates. Now, if you look at this region, the region of boundary layer will be denoted by BL. So when the outer flow deaccelerates, in this case the outer flow is deaccelerating. When the flow deaccelerates, we know that what happens, U will decrease. When U decreases, what will happen, P will increase. So inside the boundary layer, it is opposite to inside the boundary layer, it is opposite to that outside the boundary layer. Inside the boundary layer, because of the dominant viscosity effects, ux decreases and px increases, and we have unfavorable, or in other words adverse pressure gradient, which is increasing, right? So this is the difference between favorable and adverse. Now another example of this favorable pressure gradient and adverse pressure gradient is a circular cylinder. Now when the circular cylinder is moving like this, flow is moving around this, at this point the flow is irrotational before it strikes the cylinder, or even when it strikes the cylinder and it is moving at this point here. In this case, maybe in this case ux will be increasing and px will be decreasing. So in this case it will be favorable pressure gradient. But as soon as the flow starts to move or separates, we have adverse pressure gradient beyond this symmetry line, where the flow velocity decreases and the pressure increases. When the flow velocity decreases and the pressure increases, what happens? Normally, when you are moving uphill, for example, if you have to move uphill like this, right? Now, when you are walking and you don't have sufficient energy to walk, right? What is going to happen? You are going to start deaccelerating. When you deaccelerate, that means your velocity is not increasing. When your velocity is not increasing, instead of moving in forward direction, you will be forced to move in backward direction, right? Same is the case when we have adverse pressure gradient. The flow at this point is decreasing, velocity is decreasing. When the velocity is decreasing, the pressure will be increasing, right? And then we always know that flow moves from high pressure to low pressure. So when the pressure here increases and the pressure here is less, so there will be net flow from high pressure to low pressure. That is why we have backflow in this case, and that because of that backflow we have flow separation. So adverse pressure gradient is responsible for flow separation. We will also see in detail in the coming slides how this happens. So this condition is not desirable. The adverse pressure gradient is not desirable. Why it's not desirable? This condition is not desirable because the boundary layer is usually thicker, does not hug closely to the wall, and is much more likely to separate from the wall. Because of the adverse pressure gradient, we have much thicker boundary layer, and then it does not hug closely to the wall, And then because of the adverse pressure gradient, as we discussed, there will be net backward flow because of that pressure difference in backward direction, and as a result of that, the boundary layer will ultimately separate from the cylinder, forming vortices. So now, so you can clearly see here, so this is an example of adverse and favorable boundary, favorable pressure gradient. So when the incoming flow is coming in this direction, at this point we have favorable pressure gradient. That means here dp by dx will be less than 0. When it is less than 0, we will have accelerating flow here, favorable. The flow is inviscid irrotational. Now when the flow comes in contact with this aerofoil and it flows past it, because of viscosity we will have boundary layer, and then as a result the flow will deaccelerate. And because of the shape, dependent on the shape and size and Reynolds number and surface roughness of the aerofoil, also we'll discuss about these parameters later on, we will have a boundary layer, and then and because of the shape and size we will have adverse pressure gradient where dp by dx will be greater than 0, and as a result the flow will deaccelerate. And that is the reason we have flow separation in this case. So if this adverse pressure gradient increases significantly, then we will have flow separation. And how does this dp by dx increases in this case? When we increase the angle of attack, when we increase this angle of attack, this alpha, in that case we have flow separation over here. So when we have this flow separation here, it is because that this dp by dx has increased considerably and we have backflow in that case. Okay, so we'll discuss about that. Now this is the similarly, this is the case shown over here. If the adverse pressure gradient is strong enough, so you can see that the angle of attack here is different. And then if we increase the angle of attack more and more, then the flow will separate. So for this angle of attack, the flow separation is taking behind at this point. When we increase the angle of attack, the flow separation is now taking place earlier. So if the adverse pressure gradient is strong enough, then dp by dx equals to minus u du by dx is large. The boundary layer is likely to separate from the wall. The boundary layer equations are not valid downstream of the separation point because of the reverse flow in the separation bubble. So now how do we have reverse flow in the separation bubble? So we'll see that. So far, if you have any question, please feel free to ask. Okay, so now we'll discuss about this separation in detail. This is an example of an aerofoil, which is in which the incoming flow is coming in x direction, and these are the results from the wind tunnel testing. So these are the results taken from the wind tunnel testing. So it is discussing about two different concepts. One is the boundary layer separation and other is the stall condition. Now I'll show you the video first and then we'll discuss about it.
As the angle of attack of an airfoil increases, the flow in the boundary layer stops.
So now
then reverses direct.
Now you can see here that when the angle of attack was straight, when the aerofoil was lying straight, and even if the angle of attack is increasing, you can see the streamlines. These are the streamlines are flowing past the aerofoil very smoothly. But as the angle of attack is increasing, you can see the flow separation here, the flow reversal. So this flow is because of the adverse pressure gradient on the back. Now you can see here.
This is called boundary layer separation. As angle of attack increases further, the point of separation moves forward on the airfoil until it has so disturbed the flow around the airfoil that further increases in angle of attack produce less rather than more lift.
Okay, now one more thing you can see that when we have flow separation, we discussed that we have eddies or vortices formed, right? Now you can clearly see that this flow is moving up and down. The force or the flow has very dynamic effect. So it's a source of instability because of the movement of the flow. So
This condition, the wing is said to be stalled. Does an angle of attack produce less rather than more lift? In this condition, the wing is said to be stalled.
okay, now so the stall condition is so now from this video you can clearly see this separation happening in actual. So when the angle of attack was less, the flow separation was delayed, was happening on the trailing edge of this aerofoil. And then as we increase the angle of attack, the separation bubble moved forward, right? And then another interesting thing that we have in case of aircraft is that if we increase this angle of attack, which is also called alpha, sometimes it is also denoted by AOA, angle of attack. So if we increase this alpha beyond a critical value of alpha, we will have stall condition. In stall condition, what happens even if we increase the alpha beyond this critical value, it will not result in lift increase, it will cause the lift to decrease. So now from experimental analysis, a lot of people have because you know that these shapes are called aerofoils, have a lot of applications in aerospace engineering. So a lot of most of the aircrafts that we see which are designed for low speeds or high speeds, commercial or fighter aircrafts, all of them has different aerofoils of which their wings are made, right? So those aerofoils have their own classification system. One of the classification system is called NACA, NACA series, right? So these aerofoils, they not only have application in aerospace, but if you look at the blades of the wind turbine, of water turbine or windmills, you will see a similar shape like this. So aerofoils, they are also composed of aerofoils, wind turbines, wind blades, water turbine blades, and windmills. They are all composed of these aerofoils. Also, if you look at the sail of the boat, you will see the sail of the boat also has the same shape as this one. So now because of this shape is capable of generating more lift as compared to drag, that is why it has widespread applications, right? And then we can have so many variants of this shape, and those variants, one of the variants can be classification can be given in terms of NACA series. Okay, now when we have stall condition, we normally test these aerofoils inside the wind tunnel to see if we how the forces will change when we increase the angle of attack. The two types of forces that we are interested in are the lift force and the drag force, as we all know, right? So the drag force is along the incoming flow, and the lift force is perpendicular to it. In this case, force is of much more interest because we want to see how much lift a particular aircraft or aerofoil can generate. In case of an aerofoil, the lift force should be such that it excuse me, the lift force should be such that it should be greater than the weight of the aircraft. If the lift force is greater than the weight of the aircraft, only then the aircraft will be able to fly. And then this drag force, which is generated in case of an aircraft, is overcome by the thrust provided by the engines, right? So now when we say stall conditions, when stall happens, so when we have wind tunnel testing of these aerofoils, we can also plot them on a diagram called polar diagram. So we have alpha on x-axis, and we have lift force, for example, on CL over CD. Normally, we are interested in the ratio CL by CD in case of an aerofoil. So if CL by CD is greater than 1 or more, then this is capable of generating more lift as compared to drag, that aerofoil, right? So normally we have a graph like this. This is just showing you. Now in this graph, you can see that when we increase the angle of attack, this is the critical angle of attack, alpha critical. Now, if we increase the angle of attack beyond this point, you can see what happens. The lift force CL by CD is decreasing, going down. So this is called stall point. Then when we have stall condition because of flow separation, if we increase the angle of attack beyond a critical point, it results in decrease in the lift force. So this is one of the things that we need to ensure when we are designing aircrafts to avoid such stall conditions. Okay, now another video that I want to show you is a very interesting. It is on the pressure gradient. Now in this video, you will have a very good idea of what pressure gradients are and how it affects the boundary conditions. So we'll be discussing this also.
We're now going to consider boundary layers in flows in which there is a pressure gradient in the direction of the flow. First, we will consider an accelerating flow, and this would have a high pressure on the left, upstream, and a low pressure on the right, which is downstream.
Now you can see in this case, we have a plane boundary, and then we have this boundary layer on top of it. And then in this case, the flow is accelerating flow. When we say accelerating flow, in accelerating flow, because the flow is accelerating, we will have high pressure at this point and low pressure when the flow velocity has increased. So high pressure means the velocity is low here. Low pressure means that the velocity increases as we move along this direction. So this type of flow is called accelerating flow. Now in case of accelerating flow, because flow always moves from high pressure to low pressure, there will be additional flow because of this pressure gradient in the direction of accelerating flow. And how it will affect the boundary layer, we'll see that.
I'm going to ignore the boundary layer on the top surface here, and I will just consider the boundary layer on the bottom surface. So I'll draw some axes and plot Vx as a function of y. If there were no pressure gradient, then the boundary layer would look like this. Now if we think back to the case of combined Couette-Poisson
So this is parabolic profile.
flow, this situation is a bit like Couette flow.
Sorry, this is parabolic profile. When we don't have any pressure gradient, we have a parabolic profile as we discussed. So that is without dp by dx when pressure is constant.
Flow with a favorable pressure gradient, that is to say, with the pressure gradient pushing the fluid in the same direction as the mean flow. And in that situation, we saw the boundary layer velocity profile become steeper at the wall. And we find exactly the same thing happens in this situation. The boundary layer with the pressure gradient looks like this. And we find that at the wall, partial dVx by dy is larger than it was when there was no pressure gradient.
Okay, so now you can see that because flow always moves from high pressure to low pressure, in addition to the parabolic profile, the net flow from high pressure to low pressure will also contribute to the boundary layer and make it steeper like this. This is the case when curly p delta p over delta x is greater than 0. In that case, we have favorable in this case we delta p by delta x is less than 0. So in that case we have favorable pressure gradient, which is the case in which the flow is accelerating, right?
We also find that the boundary layer is a bit thinner, and that is due to conservation of angular momentum within the boundary layer, but I won't deal with that here. If instead we have the pressure gradient pushing in the other direction, that is, in the opposite direction to the mean flow, we get a very different type of behavior. The flow is decelerating, which means that we have a low pressure upstream on the left and a high pressure downstream. So the force due to the pressure gradient is in the opposite direction.
Now you can clearly see for a deaccelerating flow, this is called upstream. We also already discussed upstream is when we have incoming flow and downstream is that. So if we have a flat plate, upstream will be before the flow enters the flat plate, and downstream will be when it is flowing along and exiting the flat plate. So when the flow is deaccelerating, we will have low pressure upstream and high pressure downstream, such that the net flow will be from high pressure to low pressure in the opposite direction. So that is why we have, this is called adverse pressure gradient. Now,
to the flow. So let's consider what happens to the boundary layer velocity profile as I increase this adverse pressure gradient. I'll start with the case where the pressure gradient is equal to 0, and here we have the standard Blasius boundary layer velocity profile.
parabolic.
Now I shall draw 4 profiles as the adverse pressure gradient increases. Well, this is very like combined Couette-Poiseuille flow, in which the pressure gradient pushes the fluid in the opposite direction to the velocity of.
Now, one thing, when we have adverse pressure gradient, it will be pushing the flow in the direction from high pressure to low pressure. That is in the opposite direction in which the flow is flowing. So now let's see how it affects the parabolic profile in this case.
The top plate. Now in that case we had a parabolic profile pointing in the opposite direction to the one I just looked at, and we can estimate what the adverse pressure gradient will do to this boundary layer velocity profile. With a slight adverse pressure gradient, we will start off with an almost parabolic velocity profile in the opposite direction to the case with a favorable pressure gradient, and then we'll end up at.
Now you can see that here the effect of boundary layer adverse pressure gradient is felt near the surface, where you can see that it has become narrower. The boundary layer has become narrower as compared to the first one when we did not have any pressure gradient, right? So now this is because of the adverse pressure gradient in this case.
The free stream velocity. Note that at this point we have an inflection point. As we increase the adverse pressure gradient further, there'll come a point where the velocity gradient is 0 at the wall, and then of course we always have to end up at the free stream velocity. As we increase the adverse pressure gradient further, we'll have a region of reverse flow near the wall, and as we increase it even further, we'll have a strong region of reverse flow around the wall.
So now you can clearly see that as we increase the adverse pressure gradient, we start having reverse flow like this with the inflection point about which the flow is rotating, right? So you can clearly see that in this case, the last profile that is shown on the right, we have this is the inflection point, and then we have reverse flow acting at this point. So this flow reversal is responsible for flow separation.
And I'll draw that again at the bottom. Outside the boundary layer, the flow reaches the free stream velocity v. At the wall, by the no-slip condition, the velocity is 0.
Okay.
But just adjacent.
So you will also use the information when you use ANSYS later on in your degree. So always remember, when at the surface of the structure, where the velocity becomes 0 because of viscosity, that boundary condition is also called no slip boundary condition, where velocity v on the surface is 0.
To the wall, there is a region of reverse flow which arises due to the adverse pressure gradient. So in summary, this shows how the free stream pressure gradient affects the behavior of the boundary layer. This behavior was discovered at the beginning of the 20th century by Prandtl and was a very significant advance in fluid mechanics, albeit somewhat overshadowed by simultaneous advances in relativity.
Okay, so this is so I think this was really interesting video because it showed you how because of the adverse pressure gradient we start having backflow, and then because of this flow reversal, when we have flow separation, and then when flow separates, because of the inflection point, there is rotation about inflection point, which results in circulation of flow, and as a result we have vortices generated behind the structure. So we'll be discussing about these vortices also now. So now you can see that this is the effect of pressure gradient. We have a flat plate like this. As dp over dx starts increasing, that is called the adverse pressure gradient. So that means if dp by dx is increasing, this will be high pressure. Sorry, this will be low pressure here, and this will be high pressure here downstream when dp by dx increases. Ultimately, there will be net flow because of this from high pressure to low pressure. There will be backflow, and this backflow will affect the profile over here like this. Ultimately, we will have backflow here, and this will be the inflection point, and then because of this profile, the flow will separate from the structure. So this is the effect of adverse pressure gradient, which results in flow separation. Now this flow separation can also take place in a flat plate. This flow separation also takes place in case of a circular cylinder. Now in case of a circular cylinder, we have a circular cylinder like this, and the incoming flow is coming in this direction. Now only part of this cylinder is shown over here. This top surface, this top part is shown over here. Now you can clearly see the incoming flow here, incoming flow in this direction. This is the favorable pressure gradient when curly P by curly X is less than 0, and this is the boundary layer thickness. As we move along the surface of the cylinder, you can see that the delta curly P over curly X increases, and as a result the flow deaccelerates. When the flow deaccelerates because of the adverse pressure gradient, we have backflow here, and ultimately because of the shape of the circular cylinder and the backflow, the flow will be separated from the cylinder at this point. When the flow separates from the cylinder at this point, this is the inflection point, and because of this velocity profile, we will have circularity of flow or circulation of flow in this case like this. So this will generate vortices in the wake of the cylinder. When we have flow reversal, we cannot predict the behavior of the flow reversal using the X momentum equation that we saw earlier. Okay, so this is how. So now you can clearly see that the adverse pressure gradient plays a very important role in flow separation past any structure that we deal with. And because of that adverse pressure gradient, we have vortices generated in the wake of the cylinder. Now these vortices, what effect these vortices have on the structure, you already saw in that video when we had an aerofoil like this, and then flow separated. So you could see that the flow was very much unstable. It was like this. This is just to show you that it was moving up and down very irregularly, and that flow separation is in fact an instability which induces more drag as compared to lift. So we want to avoid such um, uh, things or such separation points. So this separation point also has adverse effect on the design of automobiles. So if you look at automobiles, initially the automobiles had shapes like this. So we discussed about this, that it had shapes like this, and then you can see because of the structure like this, the flow separated from here like this. So we had flow separations at this point because of this separation. Now with the passage of time, if you look at sports car, what they did, they tried to delay this flow separation by making the surfaces very smooth. So what they did was that if you look at the present day cars, you will see that they are more smooth like this. So they have they are much smoother like this. So they wanted to delay the flow separation so that the instability that causes induced or increased drag force, they wanted to avoid that. So this is just to give you an idea of what the effects of adverse pressure gradients are. Now uh, now how does turbulent boundary layers, so far we have been discussing about laminar boundary layers. Now always remember that we discussed that we have laminar flow and turbulent flow. When we talk about laminar flow and turbulent flow, there is also transition between laminar and turbulent flow inside the boundary layer. And what factor governs that transition? There are a lot of factors that govern that transition. One of the important factors is Reynolds number. So Reynolds number, I'm just repeating this again and again just to show you the importance of Reynolds number in fluid mechanics. That Reynolds number is basically inertial force over viscous force. Okay, and then if the and then mathematically for a flat plate, in case of a flat plate, which has length L, it is given by UL over kinematic viscosity. And for a circular cylinder which has diameter D, it is given by RE equals to UD over mu. So the characteristic length in case of the circular cylinder is diameter. In case of a flat plate, it is the characteristic length is the length L of the flat plate. Okay, so now in this case, you can clearly see that the flow becomes laminar, transitions from laminar to turbulent when the Reynolds number is increased beyond a critical value. That critical value is found from experiments and is different for a flat plate and it is different for a circular cylinder. It is also worth noting that for external flows that we are dealing here, so these are the cases of external flows. For internal flow, such as flow inside pipe, we also have transition from laminar to turbulent flow, and in that case the critical value of Reynolds number will be different, right? So in this topic, in this lecture or chapter, we will mostly be focusing on immersed bodies. Immersed bodies are those bodies which are subjected to external flows. Okay, so now that means if the length of the plate is constant, if the fluid properties are constant, that means increasing the incoming flow velocity will increase the Reynolds number. So if we increase the incoming flow velocity beyond a critical value, very high speeds, we will have transition from laminar to turbulent boundary layers, right? So for turbulent boundary layers tend to be able to sustain an adverse pressure gradient better than an equivalent boundary layer. Why? Because in case of turbulent boundary layers, inertial forces are dominant. That is why it is much easier to sustain adverse pressure gradient, and as a result the flow separation is delayed in that case. So the more efficient mixing which occurs in turbulent boundary layer transports kinetic energy from the edge of the boundary layer to the low momentum flow at the solid surface, often preventing the separation which would occur for a laminar boundary layer under the same condition. So all just the take home for this slide is that in case of turbulent boundary layers, because the inertial forces are dominant as compared to viscous forces, therefore the flow separation is also delayed in that case. But again, turbulence is not desirable. We already discussed that when we have turbulent flow, the mixing is very irregular. Because of that irregular mixing, that is a very big instability in terms of the forces that are acting on the structure in case of turbulent flow. So we turbulent flows actually are not, in most of the cases we want to avoid turbulent flows, but in some of the cases turbulent flows are also desirable. For example, if we want to mix coffee, milk and sugar together, so we stir the mixture, right, so that we have uniform mixture. So that stirring is also a turbulence, is generating turbulence, and in that case that turbulence is helping to mix the mixture. So for some of the multi-phase flows where we have more than two types of fluids involved, sometimes turbulence is actually assisting in mixing, and also in that case it is sometimes desirable also. Okay, so now this is this is it for the effects of pressure gradient. So we have discussed about pressure gradients all in detail over here, and then now I'll just take 10 minutes break, and then I'll just leave you at around 3:20 3:30 because I have to leave earlier. So I'll finish at between 3:20 3:30. I will just finish the lecture today. Okay, so you can take break for 10 minutes and we'll meet at 3 p.m. now. Okay, so we'll just continue our discussion on drag and lift force now. So that was for the effects of pressure gradient. Now, I'll just quickly go through this drag. We already have been discussing about drag and lift previously also. So drag is the component of a force on a body acting parallel to the direction of relative motion. So in case of a circular cylinder, if this is the incoming flow, the drag force will always be in the direction of incoming flow, like this. Similarly, in case of an aerofoil, if this is the incoming flow, which is given by u, here also u, the drag force will always be in the direction of incoming flow ft. And similarly, in case of a flat plate also, so the incoming flow is coming in this direction, and then the drag force or the skin friction force will always be in the direction of incoming flow ft. Right now, this drag force, as we discussed in case of an aerofoil, it can be because of the pressure force. The drag because of the pressure force is called FDP, and the drag because of the shear force is called FD tau. So now the total drag force FD will be equal to FD because of pressure plus FD because of tau. In some of the cases, the drag force might only be because of pressure, or it might only be because of shear stress. For example, in case of a flat plate, if the pressure is constant, it is acting in this direction, normal to the plate. So in this case, the drag force is only because of the shear stress. Similarly, if we have a flat plate that is oriented at 90 degrees to the incoming flow, like this, in this case, the drag force is only because of the pressure force P, right? So it depends on the case that we are dealing. And in case of an aerofoil and circular cylinder, it is combination of both FDP and FD tau. Now we'll consider, so this is the equation that we have. So you can clearly see here, drag force is sum of all the forces in x direction, and this is the contribution of pressure inside drag force, and this is the contribution of shear stress inside the drag force. So we have already derived this equation previously, so I won't be going into the details of this equation, but for now just remember that this is FD FXP, the contribution of pressure along x direction and contribution of shear stress along x direction. And then when we add both of these components together, that will give us the drag force. Now, drag force has units of newtons. In most of the cases, it is desirable to non-dimensionalize the drag force. So we non-dimensionalize the drag force by dividing it by half rho u square a, yeah, which is also called dynamic pressure force, which is a function of kinematic, which is related to kinetic energy, right? So now CD equals to D, which is in newtons, divided by half rho u square a, which is also will give you newtons. So this will cancel out, and so this CD is called drag coefficient. So it is non-dimensional form of drag force. Now we know that CD is a function of many parameters. So now, for example, if we have a circular cylinder, the value of CD will be different. In case if we have an aerofoil, the value of CD will be different. If we increase the angle of attack of this aerofoil, again, because of the changing aerofoil angle of attack, the CD value will change. If we have a flat plate, it will be different. If we have a circular disc, the value of CD will be different. If we have a sphere, it will be different. So CD is a function of many parameters. Some of the parameters that it depends on is the shape. Then CD is also a function of Reynolds number. Reynolds number determines whether the flow is laminar or turbulent or transitioning, right? So CD is also a function of Reynolds number. CD is also a function of Mach number. Now, Mach number, you might have heard of Mach number. Mach number, MA. Mach number is also a non-dimensionalized number. It is denoted by MA and or simply M, and it is given by capital V over C, where V is the incoming flow velocity. So I can say that in case of an aerofoil, this is V. V is the incoming flow velocity, and C is the speed of sound. Speed of sound. And the speed of sound is a function of the properties of the fluid. For example, it is dependent on K R T, where K is Cp over Cv, specific specific heat capacity ratio. Cp is specific heat at constant pressure. Cv is specific heat at constant volume. R is real gas constant. Real gas constant. And then T is temperature. So now you can see that the speed of sound is dependent on the temperature. For different temperature, it will be different. For different specific heat ratio, it will be different. For different gases, it will be different. Now the ratio of V divided by C, incoming flow to the speed of sound, is called Mach number. Based on this definition of Mach number, we can have three types of flow classification. If Mach number M is less than 1, we call that flow as subsonic flow. If Mach number is equal to 1, we call that type of flow as sonic flow. If Mach number is greater than 1, we call that type of flow as supersonic flow. And then we also have hypersonic flow when Mach number is greater than 2 or 3, another value, but we will be discussing about that when we deal about compressible flow. Now, the reason why I am discussing this, although we will be discussing about Mach numbers in detail in compressible flow chapter, but I want to make a classification of flow. Another classification is of flow which is called incompressible flow and compressible flow. So mostly if you work in fluid mechanics, you will either be dealing with incompressible flow or you will be dealing with compressible flows. Now always remember water flows and air flows at low Mach number, M is less than 0.3, we can assume the density to be constant. Density variations are very less, and then we can say that the flow is incompressible. So if density is constant, the flow is incompressible. Now air flows at high speeds. So Mach number less than 0.3, that means low speeds. Subsonic flow, right? But now air flows at high speeds when Mach number is greater than 0.3. In that case, the density variations cannot be neglected. Now the density is not constant, and such type of flows are called compressible flows, right? Most of the flows that we encounter in aerospace are mostly compressible flows, and most of the water flows that we deal with are incompressible flow, right? So that is the reason when we talk about Mach number, we'll be discussing about Mach number when we talk about compressible flows in the next chapter, right? So now CD is also a function of Mach number. Now you can see there is another parameter called Froude number, FR. So this FR is called Froude number. Froude's number. Now what is Froude number? Froude number is the ratio of inertial force to gravitational force. And then what is the significance of this number? So this Froude number becomes significant when we are dealing with waves. and currents. Because if you look at waves and currents, they are all subjected to gravitational forces. So in that case, this Froude number becomes significant. If inertial force is significant as compared to gravitational force, then we can neglect gravitational force. So we discussed about tsunamis. So in the case of tsunamis, the waves that are generated has very much inertia, are dominant in inertial force as compared to gravitational force. So it has very high Froude number. So Froude number mathematically is given by V, which is indication, or which represents inertial force, divided by square root GL, where G is the acceleration due to gravity and L is the length. I won't be going into the derivation of this equation, but it can easily be derived by dividing the inertial force with the gravitational force, and then we get this as Froude number. So the numerator is inertial force and the denominator is the gravitational force, right? So CD also depends on gravitational or Froude number, and lastly CD depends upon E/L. This E is the roughness of the surface. So the roughness of the surface also plays a very important role in determining the boundary layer thickness. So now sometimes, as we discussed, we have rough surfaces, and for those rough surfaces the boundary layer will be different as compared to smooth surfaces, and as a result there will be a lot of variation in the forces in such cases also, dependent on the roughness of the surface roughness of the structure, right? So these are the things in which these are some of the parameters in which CD depends on. Now we will discuss. So the drag on a complex body can be approximated at the sum of drag on its part, right? So this is just to say that we can add the integrate the drag force along the entire surface, either because which is arising because of pressure force and drag force, and that will give us the total drag on the surface. Now friction drag. Friction drag is the part of the drag that is due directly to the shear stress magnitude plus direction on the object. So friction drag, as the name suggests, is because of shear stress only. For highly streamlined bodies, for which one of the example is flat plate lying on parallel to the incoming flow. For highly streamed bodies or for low Reynolds number flow, however, most of the drag may be due to friction drag. That makes sense. And then in that case, this dF drag force is given by half rho U square BL CDF. So this CDF is the drag force because of shear force, right? And then what is this length of the plate is L, and this B is the width of the plate, like this, in this direction. This is width of the plate B here. So now friction drag force is a function of both Reynolds number and relative surface roughness E by L for turbulent flows. We'll see that later on also. And then now the other type of drag force is because of the pressure force. That drag force because of pressure force is pressure drag is that part of the drag that is due directly to the pressure on an object, right? Now, as an example, the most common example that we saw is this case. In this case, drag force is only because of pressure force. Pressure force. In this case, the shear force is causing lift because of the symmetry. The lift force generated by tau in upward direction is the same as in downward direction. So net lift force will be 0 in that case. But the drag force in this case is a function of pressure force, right? So it is often referred. Now you can clearly see that when we oriented this plate perpendicular to the incoming flow, because of the shape of the form of the object, the pressure force increased drastically. So it is often this pressure drag is often referred to as form drag because of its strong dependency on the shape or form of the object. And then mathematically dp equals to integration p cos theta dA, and we can also represent it like this. If we divide this dp by half rho u square a, we get a non-dimensional form of drag force or form drag, which is cdp. Now we define dynamic pressure, or we define the non-dimensional pressure as coefficient of pressure denoted by Cp. So now this is the initial pressure and this is the final pressure. So P minus P naught, or you can say this is static pressure, P minus P naught divided by half rho u squared. This is called dynamic pressure. We discussed dynamic pressure is a function of u square, kinetic energy, right? So now we divide P minus P naught by dynamic pressure, and that will give us the coefficient of pressure, non-dimensional form of pressure. Non-dimensional form of pressure or non-dimensional form of different forces is important to conduct parametric study mostly. So now P naught is the reference pressure, Cp is the pressure constant. Now we'll quickly, so I'll just not spend a lot of time on this. We'll quickly see the dependence, the dependence of this here. So drag is dependent on a lot of parameters. Some of the parameters are shape dependence. Now you can clearly see here that we have three cases. L by D. So if we have this figure whose diameter is given by this length, this is elliptical figure, and its length is given by L. So for an elliptical figure, the diameter is given by this vertical line and length is given by this vertical line, horizontal line, right? Now when L by D equals to 0, L by D equals to 0, then what is going to happen in this case? L is almost 0, so we will have light like this. We have flat plate normal to the flow like this, right? So now when L by D equals to 1, we have a circular cylinder in that case where L and D are the same here. And then when the third case is when L by D equals to infinity, that means D is 0 now. When D is 0, that means we have a flat plate parallel to the flow. So we have three different configuration classification, right? So now in this figure, these are the experimental results in which we have L by D on the x-axis and we have drag coefficient on the y-axis. So clearly you can see that this solid line is plotted with CD equals to D over 1/2 rho U square BL, where this is L and B is its width or length, you can say. This is length B. Okay, so now you can see at this point L by D is 0. So this is the case when flat plate is normal to the flow. Then at this point L by D is 1. When L by D is 1, this is the case when we have circular cylinder. This is the value of CD for circular cylinder. And then when L by D is infinity, this is the case. This becomes straight, parallel to this x-axis. And at this point, we have flat plate parallel to the flow where L by D is infinity. So this is this is the dependence of CD on L by D, the shape dependence. Now on this solid line, it is using this. So it is non-dimensional CD, the non-dimensionalizing CD by using half rho U square B into D. Instead of using length L, is using this diameter D to non-dimensionalize it. And the results are again shown over here. So sorry, my mistake. This solid line that we discussed is using this D as the diameter, and this dotted line is using L as the characteristic length here. Okay, so just make correction here. Okay, so this is just different representation of CD based on the length. Now Reynolds number Re for this case is defined as UD over mu, and it is 10 raised to the power 5. So it is in the turbulence region, and B is the length as we saw. So this is drag obtained by using either of these drag coefficients would be the same. Okay, so now shape dependence, another thing is that in this case you can see there are two cases shown over here. One is flow past a circular cylinder. The incoming flow is U, the incoming flow density is rho, the diameter of the cylinder is D. And then we have another case where we have a streamlined aerofoil. In this case, the incoming flow is U rho, and then it is possible that the drag force for both these cases, dA for this one, is the same as dB for this one. How is it possible? Any idea? Now, if you look at here, we have two objects considerably different size that have the same drag force. Circular cylinder CD, the CD in this case is 1.2 from experiments, and CD for this streamlined strut or aerofoil is CD equals to 0.12. The CD value is different, right? So how come the drag force can be the same? Because drag force CD is equal to D F or D over half rho U square A. It is possible to adjust the area of this circular cylinder and this aerofoil in such a way that the drag force of dA becomes equals to dB, right? So in that case, although the CD value is different, but because we adjust it, we can see that the drag force, coefficient of drag, is not only dependent on dF, but it is also dependent on rho, it is also dependent on U, and it is also dependent on the area. So that means area has significant effect on the drag force. So we can make sure we can make dA equals to dB by adjusting the area in such a way that the drag force becomes the same. So in this case, you can see that the drag force is the same for both of them. So what we have done, because in circular cylinder, the area CD is 1.2. In order to make dA equals to dB, we have decreased its size as compared to this, because in this case CD is less. So by decreasing the size of the circular cylinder, we have matched the drag force on both the cases. Sometimes when we are performing similarity analysis and we are analyzing two different turbines or compressors, or for that for any structure, and we want to have same drag force on both of them, then we make use of these principles where we can equate dA with dB or CD for both of them and adjust the areas and lengths to make the drag force same throughout. Okay, so this is just an example of that. Now we'll just finish in few minutes. Okay, so now the next is Reynolds number dependence. Reynolds number dependence is, we have three different cases of Reynolds number dependence. When Reynolds number is less than 1, when Reynolds number is less than 1, this is very interesting case. Why? Because Reynolds number is less than 1 means inertial force over viscous force. So that means viscous force are now greater than inertial force in that case. So when viscous force are dominant, that means very slow speed flow. For example, when you slightly, if the tap of your sink is leaking, for example, and you have closed the tap, you can see that the water flowing drop by drop, right? So that might be an example of very low Reynolds number, maybe 2, 3, 4 Reynolds number. So this is even less than that, right? So Reynolds number dependence, very low Reynolds number flow, in this case governed by balance between viscous and pressure forces. Now drag force in this case will be a function of u, incoming flow length, and dynamic viscosity. This is called dynamic viscosity, and the one we use to calculate Reynolds number, we normally use this one, kinematic viscosity. The relationship is kinematic viscosity is dynamic viscosity divided by density. So now it is a function of, for fluid properties, mu, L length, and U incoming flow. Now another factor that D depends on is the shape of the structure also, as we saw. So in order to take into account the shape of the structure, we introduce another constant that is called C, right? So this C is representation of the shape of the structure. Now this is the value of D. Now I can substitute this value of D in the equation for CD. CD equals to D over half rho U square L square, and now it becomes 2 mu C mu Lu over rho U square L. L square is basically area, because area is meter square, so L square represents area. Now you can see, once we substitute the drag force here, this L will cancel with L, this U will cancel with U here, and then I can write it like this: 2C mu over rho UL. Since 1 over RE equals to mu over rho UL. Now I can also use, if I use mu to represent Reynolds number, it will be like this. Now this is basically 1 over Reynolds number. So I can write CD as 2C over RE. That means in case of a very low Reynolds number, RE less than 1, CD is a function, is inversely proportional to 1 over RE, like this. Okay, so this is the case when Reynolds number is less than 1. Okay, so now we will finish over here. We'll just stop here for today, and then we'll resume this discussion tomorrow as well. So now if you have any question, please feel free to ask. Any question?
No, sir.
Okay, so now if in case if you don't have any question, we'll just stop here. I'll just take your attendance and then I'll let you go. So just give me a few minutes.